Did you know you can rewrite your story? It's true. I've done it 100 times. I'm Kath Telford. I am a mum to 2 grown men. I'm a spirituality life coach and intuitive, and I also teach radical forgiveness. In my life, I've experienced trauma, loss, and insurmountable grief at times. I've worked through an eating disorder, sexual assault, and physical and mental abuse. But I'm still standing, and I'm happier and stronger than ever. My mission with this podcast is to create a community, a safe space where you can feel seen, heard, and above all else, loved. At the end of each episode, I will ask you a question and offer you a call to action. I will also tell you how you can get involved and share your stories. You'll be invited to ask me questions and make suggestions on what you want to hear. I will be having some incredible guests along the way, some amazing human beings that have overcome diversity in their life. They will share with you their stories and how they got to where they are now. We will cover everything from birth to death and the big dash in between, and all things spiritual and woo-woo, my favourite topic. This ride may get rough at times, so buckle up and let's go. Hello, my darling souls, and welcome back to season 2 of You Can Rewrite Your Story. It has been a crazy 6 weeks, 2 months, maybe a bit longer. But there has been a heck of a lot going on in my life since I last recorded and spoke to you all. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the last couple of months and how once again Kath Telford has rewritten her story. So, first of all, Happy New Year, everybody. And I hope you had an amazing break over Christmas if you got to have a break. And I hope that you got to spend time with loved ones and you weren't too traumatized, as I know sometimes Christmas and family get-togethers can be. Anyway, so going back to November, mid-November, early November, I'm not sure how much I spoke about my work commitments at the time. Sure, I mentioned it, sprinkled out through some of my podcast episodes. So I was working in the disability field. I worked as a support coordinator for a company, small organisation, not officially a company as yet. Anyway, a couple of months ago, I had a couple of things that happened through my job where loved ones of clients had passed away. There'd been a few deaths. There'd been some tragedies, some highs, some massive highs, some really low lows, and some wins, some losses. Without going into too much detail, it was a bit of a roller coaster for the last few months. But I found what happened. One of my clients lost a son. I'll say that again. I choked on that word. Lost a son to an accidental drug overdose. And it triggered me. It sent me into a spiral that I couldn't seem to pull myself out of. Now, I had thought I had worked through these spirals in my life as far as what were my triggers and what I was able to work my way through. But this one set me off. And within 24 hours, there was another death, not directly to our company, but someone that I'd been helping to try and get some support. Passed away, quite a young woman. Anyway, so the death of my client's son, who was very similar age to my son, Sam, who I have spoken about before, pulled stuff out of me that I had forgotten. I don't know if forgotten's the word. I think that was more stuff that I hadn't addressed, I hadn't dealt with emotionally. I was probably hiding how deeply I had been affected from the last 16 years and the things that occurred over those years with my son and his addiction and several car accidents and several near deaths from too many drugs. And as programmed, as we are in our life, as programmed, I had gotten on with it. I just got on with it. You got on with life. You went to work. You didn't let your personal life affect your professional life. You dusted off and you went about doing your job. And I'd had a couple of incidences this year where my son came very close to being killed. And a couple of things last year. It's never-ending story, never-ending story. However, we are eternally hopeful that one day I can say that that story is over. Anyway, back to my trigger. So it sent me into quite a spiral, the death of this client's son, being a similar age, being a similar nature to my son. And it gutted me, absolutely gutted me. And I couldn't seem to pull myself out of it. I just kept getting deeper and deeper into memories of past traumatic incidences with my son. And I suppose in a sense, some kind of transference of emotion occurred, if that makes sense to people listening. And what I mean by that is because I hadn't dealt with my own stuff and had just dusted off and got on with the job like you do, it was easier for me to grieve for this other child, if that makes sense. Well, it sounds a bit wacky, but that's what it was like. It was like the emotions that I had held on to for so long from my son's, I'm going to say mishaps. That's a really light word for what we've been through. But through everything that he has been through that, directly affects me as his mum, I had somehow managed to gloss over that trauma, those traumas, one ongoing trauma, and found that I was grieving for this other mother. And I couldn't pull myself out of it. Anyway, I found I wasn't sleeping. I was eating all the wrong foods. I returned to old habits. I had a few drinks here and there along the way with, not like I used to, but it was certainly my newfound spiritual knowledge, so to speak, took a little bit of a nosedive just momentarily. And I had gone backwards. And what this meant for me was that I wasn't able to be as present in my everyday life. I wasn't able to be as present in my work life.
I was scrambling. I found my days and nights. I was just constantly scrambling, trying to keep up with keeping up. I don't even know how to explain it properly. But I found I was falling over in areas of my life where I was normally really strong and normally really switched on. And once this stumble started, I couldn't seem to pull back. I couldn't seem to gain my feet under me. And the bad news just seemed to keep coming. I can't even tell you what it was like. So I'll go back to earlier, a few months before all of this had happened, and I had come to the decision that my 5-year relationship was over, which was really hard. And we remained very close and very amicable and very loving of each other and very respectful of each other and very caring of each other. And I moved into the back bedroom. So I had started a whole new phase of my life anyway. So that was that, which was huge. Then a few other things along the way. And then these couple of deaths, the one main one that really triggered me. And after a couple of months of all these changes that were going on, I went through a very, very sleepless weekend. And I hadn't stopped crying for weeks. The littlest things were setting me off, things that I could normally just bypass and ignore or once again dust off and move on from, were really deeply affecting me. And I found myself back in the black hole that I hadn't been in for a really long time. And I was fucking up left, right, and center. I was forgetting things. I wasn't as diligent with my job, which goes against everything I've been raised to be when it comes to my job. Um, I was doing my job. I was actively doing my job. But I wasn't as clear thinking as I would normally have been. And I found I was getting mixed up, muddled up, forgetting things, like I said. Anyway, it's been a rough few months. So I made the heartbreaking decision to resign from that role, which triggered a whole, can I tell you, a whole other gamut of grief, because I had 20 plus clients whose lives I had been ingrained in for, upwards of 12 months, some of them, up to 18 months, some of them. And I had given all of myself to these people, my heart. When I put myself into something, I put myself in wholeheartedly. And to then have to go, first of all, to the people I'd been working for who had been incredible in the last 18 months and helped me get through some really rough patches. And always had me laughing and were always there when I wanted to cry. And, firstly, not just having to tell them that I had decided to leave, but to then have to let all my clients know that I was leaving. And that was tough. Having to ring each and every one of them and say the same thing over and over and over again. It was like every time I had to say the words, I've decided to leave, and, whatever my reasons were, just got some stuff going on in my personal life. It was kind of like being re-traumatized over and over again. and I would cry. My days were spent just crying, 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 not sleeping, guilt-ridden, like beyond any guilt that I had felt for a very, very long time. So in the middle of all of this, people, I found a house, a new home to live in, a new house to live in, that I would make a home. And so the week I was to move, my former partner had to go away for work. So I was like, okay, good. So I'm doing this completely alone, which was very daunting. And I was moving into this new house with my youngest son, Joshy, and we were both very excited. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm doing this alone. I'm doing it. And I've done it hundreds of times. I have probably moved more times in my life than I could count on my hands and toes. And it's never been daunting like this before, but it was like I was diving off into the abyss. I had left my relationship. I had once again said goodbye to my son, my eldest one, who was off to be a guest of Her Majesty's again for another stint after some horrendous behaviour. I was leaving my job. I was leaving, people that had been my world for 18 months. And not just the people I worked with, but the people I worked for, as in my clients. So it was like I was just jumping into the abyss. And sprinkled throughout this has been some other personal traumas. And I'm going to try not to cry. And I will broach on one of these subjects in a few episodes' time. But I got a call the Friday that I was finishing at my job. I got a call to say that one of my nephews had taken his life. And I hadn't seen this nephew for 20 years. It'd have to be over 20 years. Through circumstances, he had become estranged from our family, which was, really sad for all of us because family's family. And this young man had a soft spot I had a soft spot in my heart for this one when he was younger. And to get this news that this young man had made this decision to end his life because of whatever was going on in his world. And then I find out a couple of days later that one of my biological sisters, so I've told the story about me being adopted, I'm sure. I had a million siblings. I will go into that story more involved one day of where we all are and however many of us there are. But I got news that she only had a matter of weeks to live, and she was only 2 years older than me. She'd been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, and she didn't have long to go. And on top of that, I was made aware that my eldest brother, who had been battling a form of cancer for quite some time, was probably not going to make the next few months. So I was like, I'm not going to say I can't even tell you because I can tell you. I thought the bottom had fallen out of my world. I had moved into this beautiful new home. I was in this amazing new place near the beach where I'd been wanting to live. All these beautiful things were happening in my life, but I couldn't seem to find enjoyment or joy because these things just kept coming. And, you know, one of the things that I want to really touch on is, although to some people these mightn't all seem linked, I don't know if that's really what the word is I'm trying to say, but it was like, so my biological sister passing away, so she ended up passing Christmas Eve. So we lost her Christmas Eve 4 weeks before my nephew went to God, by choice. Very sad, very tragic. And these other deaths that weren't directly connected to me, it, once again, the grief, it was like the universe, God, whoever it is that you want to believe in, it was like I was being tested like I'd never been tested before. And there was a lot of underlying things going on too. But talking to friends of mine, when I finally, so yes, I was crying a lot in those last few months, but I didn't cry as much as I cried the day I was sitting on the floor in this new space that I'm sitting in now, recording this episode, trying to put together a desk and a bookshelf. And can I tell you, nothing will push you over the edge quite like trying to put fucking furniture together on a stinking hot day on your own when you can't read the instructions. Nothing quite pushes you over the edge like that. And I ended up in the middle of this floor in fetal position, sobbing like a baby, sobbing, guttural sobs. And I had a couple of friends who just happened to call me during those couple of hours that I was in this state, and I couldn't speak. It was, I laugh now because that's what I do. That's how I do things. I laugh. But I was, you know, those sobs where you actually, the words aren't forming, you know, that that kind of cry, you know, that kind of cry. Yeah, that's where I was. And I was by myself in the house. I was by myself, not out there. I wasn't by myself. Thank God I had people that were checking in on me. Anyway, it's been rough. It's been a rough few months. And I have managed to once again find some sanity and find some peace in what's been happening. Huge. It's huge. And I know this is going to sound like an episode that just bangs on, because, you know, I love to bang on this microphone. And it probably won't tie together at all. But I needed you to understand. I wanted you to understand. I didn't need you to understand anything. I wanted you to understand where I've been again in the last few months. And I chose to end last season after the last episode that I did because I wasn't capable of giving all of me to you. I wasn't capable of, well, I wasn't capable of stringing a sentence together. Let's just start there. I couldn't talk without blubbering like a baby. I had some other stuff going on. Like I said, some personal things. When I left my job, things didn't quite go the way I wanted them to go. I wanted it to be sort of a happy, see you later kind of thing, and it didn't end up going that way. And that brought up some other stuff. So my ending of 2023 was a gut wrenching, bottom of the bucket, scraping mess. But it passed. It has passed. There's still some sadness there, and there's still some um sadness, I suppose, is the word that I want to say. There is still some sadness there. There is still some disappointment with some of the things that occurred um, with leaving my job, with how people behaved. Um, I will speak to that more in another episode because I want to really touch on the mental health aspect and how I think or I feel I know, whatever one of those words, it's still not being understood. Mental health is such a big subject. It's such a big subject. And whether or not you're able to voice what's going on for you. So I probably, most likely didn't quite string together how broken I was feeling when it came to leaving my job. I probably didn't explain myself enough to the bosses that I wasn't leaving for any other reason, bar I felt like I was failing. I felt like I was failing at life again. I felt like I was letting people down. I felt like my world was ending. Um, I couldn't put one foot in front of the other. Everything, I was having anxiety attacks. I was, like I said, crying. I wasn't sleeping. I was forgetting things. I was getting in my car and driving to places and then realizing that's not where I was supposed to be driving to. And that became terrifying for me. So getting in a car was anxiety forming. I just felt like I was on high alert the whole time, hyper vigilant. Um, every time the phone rang, I got angry because I didn't want to speak to people, yet I really did want to. I wanted to be able to tell people how I was feeling, but it was the wrong people ringing. It was clients ringing me, for God's sake. It wasn't the wrong people. It was the people that were supposed to be ringing me. But I was at the point where I was so broken and so fractured that I was becoming resentful of these people needing me when I couldn't even function for myself. I couldn't function. So my choice to leave my job had nothing to do with me moving on to bigger and brighter places. Yes, it had become very stressful. Yes, I was extremely burnt out. But for me to have left as abruptly as I left was because I had literally fallen apart. And the way I feel that I have been treated since I left that job, yeah, as it's had a really profound effect on me. And once again, brought up some very deep issues that I had to deal with. So that's where I've been. There is going to be some episodes coming up that are going to be very, very triggering for some people. And we are going to talk more around the mental health subject. From my experience, because I can't speak to you about your experience, I can speak to you from my experience and hope that what I've been through and what I still battle with from time to time, it doesn't magically go away one day. You don't just wake up one day and find the magic pill and go, that's never going to happen again. I'm never going to fall apart like that again because I meditate every day and I walk and I go to yoga and not. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. You find the tools to help you manage better. You learn to recognize when you need help, and you very quickly learn who you can trust and who's going to be there for you. And I am extremely grateful. Here come the tears. Extremely grateful to those friends that have never left my side and have been through everything with me. And a lot of them have been in my life for a very, very, very long time. And some of them are new friends. And I am so grateful to each and every one of them for being there for me to help pull me through the last few months and to help me remember who I am and not fall back into the trap of thinking I was unlovable or unworthy because a few people that I worked with didn't understand what was going on for me. And I've made some amazing friendships through my job, not with the people I was working with for reasons, but some clients, relatives of clients that I got to know over the last 18 months that have stuck with me, who just want to be my friend and still want me in their lives because I made a difference in theirs. And that means the world to me. So I'm looking forward to the next part of this journey, for want of a better word, because you know how much I hate that word journey. But the next part of this next stage of my life, I'm looking forward to sharing it all with you. I'm looking forward to having some more amazing guests to delve, as I said, into the subject of mental health as one particular huge subject. I have some guests coming up who work in the men's health sector and have profound effect on people's lives through what they share. And we want to talk more about the suicide story because there's a lot to talk about around that. And I don't necessarily mean my immediate experience. I mean the fact that there are so many young men out there and women, but there is a sector of young men out there who are really struggling and feel that they can't talk to people, or feel that because they're at a certain age now, they need to be doing X, Y, Z because that's what ABC told them they had to do. And these men in this age bracket between 30 and 40 who feel like their lives haven't gone the way they should have gone are making these decisions. And we need to change that. We need to make this conversation more open and more broadly heard. So with that, I'm going to sign off for today because I'm sure all I've done is prattle on, but I hope all of you understand where I was coming from, and welcome to my next chapter because it's going to be a doozy, because they're always doozies. But I always get through and I always get up and dust off and keep going. But I'm learning these days to not be so hard on myself when I do fall down. And I'm learning more and more about unconditional love of my friends and people around me who hang on to me no matter what. And I love you all. So thanks again for joining me. And I'll be back next week with hopefully a more cohesive episode. And I hope it makes some sense. because I don't know if today's has made any sense at all, but I felt I needed to get on here and just talk to you guys and let you know what's been going on. So happy New Year. Happy next chapter. I love you all so much, and I can't wait to spend the next few months talking to you, banging on again on my microphone. I love you guys. Thanks for everything. Bye.
So, thank you for listening to today's podcast. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. To get in touch with me regarding any of my episodes, you will find me on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok at Kath Telford Empowerment Coach. I love you.